Good morning, Wabash. Giving today's chapel talk is Dr. Wysocki. Professor Wysocki is an assistant professor of chemistry at Wabash with a specialty in organic chemistry and research interests related to the synthesis of fluorescent dyes. She grew up as the mayor's daughter in New Berlin, Wisconsin, before graduating in 2003 from Northwestern University with a double major in chemistry in the integrated science program. She received her PhD from the University of Madison, Wisconsin in 2008 and spent time at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute before arriving at Wabash in 2011. She's a fan of the Packers, the Badgers, beer and cheese, like any good Wisconsin native. Giving her talk titled, Why Wabash, Dr. Laura Wysocki.
Thank you, Jimmy. And I'll say it too, good morning, Wabash. I want to start by thanking the Sphinx Club for the honor of speaking here today. And thank you to all of you for coming out today. It means a lot to think that you think I might have something interesting to say. I've heard many say it's pretty intimidating to stand up here, but I think they're wrong. It's absolutely terrifying. I would probably be more comfortable talking about organic chemistry, but I imagine the crowd would be a little bit smaller. Instead, I'll talk about something else that I hope will find resonance in your lives, which is a joke for the chem majors, yeah. It's the only one, I promise. Often, when I tell people what I do for a living, their immediate response is, that sounds great, but why Wabash? As one student put it, when it comes to Wabash College, I'm gender challenged. And some people wonder how I could teach at a school that wouldn't have allowed me to attend. I imagine I'm not the only one who gets that question, considering that many of your peers rank women on campus, or fun college town, or even an easy class every once in a while, high on their list of priorities when choosing a school. So, why Wabash? To be honest, I've spent a lot of time thinking and wondering how to answer that question. It's not immediately obvious, but there's something about this place that makes it feel like home. I've noticed it in others too, like the student who is being recruited by DePaul football, but who ended up cheering on the Wabash side of the field by the end of the game. Or the student who was dead set against Wabash and missed Honor Scholar Weekend, only to end up graduating as one of the top seniors in his class. Or how many of you have thought about transferring at some point? Some of you actually took the step to get transfer papers, and I know a few of you even filled them out. But I could also ask the upperclassmen, how many of you would choose Wabash all over again and count it as one of the best decisions they ever made? This place is not always easy, but for most of us, it's worth the fight. Why? Why do students go through the struggle day in and day out? Why do faculty and staff put everything they have into making Wabash the best it can be? Why do alumni look back at their time here as the best in their lives? Why do we all care so much? What is it about Wabash that makes it feel like home? The answer is different for many of us, and I imagine my own answer to that question will change over time. But I'd like to share with you the answer I've come to. When I was looking for jobs a few years ago, I almost didn't even apply to Wabash. I thought, a college for men? What do they want with me? And wouldn't that be a little weird? But I looked down at my list of schools and noticed there was an all-women's college there. It seemed hypocritical not to consider a school for men. I looked further into Wabash and found educational values that I share. I found great facilities for my research, and yes, I even found women on the faculty and staff. Even before I arrived on campus, I heard the saying, Wabash always fights. To be honest, I thought it was kind of endearing. Like me saying, go Cats to my Northwestern friends, or AOT to my sisters in Kappa Delta. It seemed like something people used in emails or a battle cry cheering on their team, and it seemed pretty creative. I liked it even more when I heard it at a football game. It was a positive message when the games started to get a little scary, and I was used to fans at larger schools booing their own teams when mistakes were made. As you can tell, I didn't really get it. But I knew there was something about Wabash that I didn't feel at any other place, and the decision to come here turned out to be an easy one. The motivated students and fantastic colleagues that I met, along with the resources I felt I needed to teach effectively in the classroom and the lab, how could I say no? But 2 years later, I'm starting to understand that it was much more than that. Wabash always fights isn't just a saying or a motto. It's an attitude and a way of life that I identify with. I'll have to give you a little background to explain why. When I was 14, I was kind of an athlete. I was tall for my age. I played almost every sport. My favorite was volleyball, and my mom drove me around the Midwest in the pre-dawn hours so I could play in tournaments with my club volleyball team. I had some knee problems, but with a basketball star as a big brother, I was used to seeing him ice his knees and hearing about tendinitis, so it seemed perfectly normal. When I started to sit out practices because my back hurt too much to play, my volleyball coach told my mom I was way too young to be having these problems. We saw doctor after doctor, and I underwent a litany of tests. They found nothing that would explain the level of widespread pain that I was having, and I had to quit sports. Eventually, one doctor asked me a simple question. Do you cry when you're in pain? When I said yes, he diagnosed me with fibromyalgia. It's common to cry with acute pain, like breaking an arm. But most people with continuing pain grumble and wince without the tears. This felt like very flimsy evidence to me, especially for such a frightening diagnosis. You may have heard of fibromyalgia. It affects somewhere around 6 million Americans, and although there's no cure, there seems to be an ad for Lyrica or Cymbalta during every commercial break. But 16 years ago, more than half the doctors I saw didn't even recognize it as a real disease. There's a huge range of symptoms, some of which seem contradictory to one another. And the only one I experienced was chronic pain. Many doctors just saw it as something to tell patients when they were stumped. But there I was, 15 years old, and I faced a chronic, degenerative disease that no one really understood. My mom did everything she could to help me cope with the situation. She took me to the local YWCA where there was a support group for people with fibromyalgia. It usually affects middle-aged women, so I was definitely out of place. I was young. And all I heard from the women were comments like, I lost my job because of fibromyalgia. My husband left me because of fibromyalgia. I'm depressed because of fibromyalgia. They were bitter, angry, and hopeless. As you can imagine, that only scared me more. I decided in that moment that I would never blame anything in my life on fibromyalgia. I would never let it define me. That quick decision was made by a scared little kid. I was still in denial, like it was all a big mistake. I certainly didn't want to look in my future and be old, divorced, and unemployed. Even though I made that promise to myself out of fear, as I matured, I stuck by it. I wouldn't let fibromyalgia stand in the way of something I knew I could do. There were things I abandoned because of the pain. I would never be an athlete. But I was pretty smart, and I didn't need my body to excel academically. I worked hard, and I got into the integrated science program at Northwestern University. In my freshman year, walking the 1 mile distance between classes started to become an issue. My mom tirelessly worked with the school to figure out a way to help, and they agreed to reimburse a taxi to class. I tried that once or twice, but the logistics of calling a cab after class, hoping there was one nearby, having the cash necessary for about a $4 cab ride, and organizing the receipts for reimbursement were not easy. That wasn't a feasible option, and instead my doctor decided that I had passed that point and was now legally handicapped. In some ways, that's still hard for me to admit. I wasn't in a wheelchair, and I didn't even limp because the pain was on both sides of my body. Every time I used my parking pass, I wondered if people were judging me, and sometimes they even called me out on it, making rude comments, accusing me of laziness, or stealing a spot from someone who really needed it. Of course, they had no idea that I was mentally counting the steps it took me to get to the door, and hoping I'd make it without having to rest. The handicap status was supposed to be temporary until we could find an effective treatment, but it lasted for the next 9 years. Through college, I powered through the pain, ignoring it, hiding it, and only discussing it with those closest to me. Even then, I didn't like to talk about it because it reminded me that there were things I couldn't do. I went through some difficult times, tried every treatment in the book, and saw more and more doctors. I got x-rays, CAT scans, and MRIs, changed my diet, took supplements, had acupuncture, massage therapy, physical therapy on 5 or 6 different occasions, aqua therapy, went to chiropractors, rheumatologists, orthopedic surgeons, got Botox shots to stop the muscle spasms, and tried Lyrica, Cymbalta, and a dozen other drugs that were thought to have a fighting chance against fibromyalgia. Exercise was always thought to be the best treatment, but the pain was too much. Even the physical therapists that I saw didn't feel comfortable leaving me with exercises because I couldn't do them without significant pain. Nothing worked, and in order to continue, I had to take narcotics to curb the pain. This was an incredibly tough decision because clarity of mind is so important to me. Again, I dealt with people doubting me and treating me like an addict seeking pills. Deep down, I know I was the same person, but I was very shy and quiet, which is shocking, I know. As it turns out, it becomes difficult to hold a conversation when you're also worried about your medication schedule, or finding a chair to sit in before you collapse from the pain, or stopping the tears from forming in your eyes. My dream was always to teach, but I wasn't sure I could physically stand long enough to make it through a 50-minute class period. At that point, 10 minutes of standing was my maximum. When I graduated, I called upon that promise I made to myself as a 15-year-old and decided that I was smart enough to get my PhD, and fibromyalgia wouldn't stop me. I headed to the University of Wisconsin-Madison with a fellowship in hand and jumped in the work with both feet. I decided not to tell my advisor about my health issues because I didn't want him to doubt my abilities or wonder if he could count on me. I just wanted him to see me as a normal, productive, successful graduate student. I wasn't really prepared for the long hours, and most meals happened at the vending machine. My stress level skyrocketed, and the pain only increased. I put everything I had into keeping up with my research, and at the end of the day, I collapsed. My parents made the trip from Milwaukee to help keep my apartment in order. They did my laundry, did my grocery shopping, and helped me take care of my dog. I was lucky enough to find a group of people that I could confide in, and they generously supported me as friends and coworkers throughout graduate school. I had to ask for help dozens of times a day, and they never hesitated, even though they were dealing with their own time constraints and their own issues. I would be working some days with tears streaming down my face, but I was too stubborn to go home, and my boss never doubted that I would get things done. In 5.5 years, I never once had a conversation with him about my fibromyalgia, which may sound strange, but was exactly what I needed at the time. Around my 4th year of graduate school, my doctor told me I absolutely had to rearrange my priorities to focus on my health, and that graduate school and teaching had to take a back seat. I had to think about what kind of future I would have living with fibromyalgia. I was not always the best patient, and looking back, there were times that I ignored good advice and made poor decisions, which led to a sacrifice in my personal life to further my professional life. I can admit that. Even my parents told me that it may be time to face reality and admit I couldn't do it anymore. That came as a huge shock to me, and I looked at my choices. I had fought for so long because I didn't want fibromyalgia to define me. I had ignored everything else in my life with the singular goal of getting my PhD and becoming a professor. But what was the other option? To give up on graduate school? And what did that even mean? Give up on my dreams? Give up on the life that I knew I wanted? That didn't seem like an option at all. I decided I would keep fighting. I got through grad school with an offer that would change my life. Luke Lavis, a good friend of mine at UW-Madison, asked me to work with him at Howard Hughes Medical Institute's Genelia Farm Research Campus. He knew all about my health issues and promised that my health would be a priority and we would just have fun doing science. We worked collaboratively to foster good discussion and followed interesting leads in a field that still inspires me today. But the difference is this: I went home to relax sometimes. I started to cook my own food, and I tried to take one day off on the weekend. I came to the realization that fighting didn't necessarily mean pushing through every obstacle in my way with brute force and inflexibility. I needed to change my strategy to succeed in the long term, to work smarter, not harder. In the first year, the lower stress level allowed me to wean off my pain meds. Then I started to get on the elliptical machine in the gym. I was in terrible shape. But over the course of a year, I lost 100 pounds, and I no longer need to take anything other than the occasional dose of Advil. Exercise became my treatment. If I'm in the gym 4 days a week, my fibromyalgia pain is low, and I almost feel normal. The chronic pain will never truly go away, but it becomes easier and easier to ignore. If I try to shortcut that schedule, I feel it within a week. I will always have to deal with this, but I have learned how I can fight the pain effectively and put my stubborn nature to good use. Along the way, my friends in Virginia became like family because of their support and encouragement. Even now when I visit, they comment on the transformation from the reserved girl who didn't go out much but always had a smile to the girl who can be located from anywhere in the building by my laugh alone. You guys know about that. I'm the same person, but I don't have to push through the pain to be myself anymore. When I came here a year and a half ago, I think I recognized the same fight that I've always had within myself. In my time here, I've seen it lived out through everyone on campus. Students that are working at all hours, giving everything they have on the playing field, or prepping for an exam, or writing a paper. I've seen faculty who serve the college in every way imaginable and aren't happy with the status quo. They're smart people, but from what I can tell, they don't know the meaning of the words phoning it in. I've seen staff members who lend their support from behind the scenes without any expectation for recognition. And I've had generous offers of help from students, faculty, and staff who probably have more on their plate than they can handle. I think it's important to note I never could have gotten to my dream alone. Along the way, everyone from my parents and family, to my friends, to my colleagues, gave their love and support so generously to help me with the big and small things in my life. In the same way, Wabash Always Fights isn't just something that applies to an individual. It's something that applies to the community as a whole. Each Wabash man or woman always fights. And Wabash as a community always fights. It's not just a saying or a motto. It's what we live day in and day out. Wabash feels like home to me because I see the same fight that I have in each one of you. Some people choose the easy path and allow their setbacks and circumstances to define them. And for some, that's okay. They can find happiness in their own ways. But some people face adversity and choose another option. They decide to define themselves. Those are the people that I want to surround myself with, and those are the people I found at Wabash. The last point I want to make is that you never know what the person next to you is going through. Always means always, and that includes the support that we show to other people in the community when we don't know what their struggle is. If you think you know someone who has the perfect life, then I'd venture to guess that you don't know that person very well at all. I have to deal with physical pain every moment of my life, and I've gotten pretty good at hiding it. I've never once asked why me, because that's the hand I was dealt, and this is something I know I have the strength to deal with. Others have to struggle with all kinds of things: physical or sexual abuse, alcoholism, learning disabilities, fractured families, economic struggles, self-esteem issues, broken relationships, or any number of other challenges. You never know when someone might need a little support, so you should be ready with it at all times. Maybe the guy who's skipping class isn't just lazy. Maybe he's trying to deal with a bigger issue, and he needs someone to keep him honest and hold him accountable. Maybe the guy who's quick to anger isn't just a jerk, and he could use someone with a little patience in his life. Maybe the guy who isn't returning your calls isn't becoming a bad friend. He just doesn't know how to tell you there's something going on that he's trying to deal with. Maybe the guy who never stays on campus on weekends isn't antisocial. Maybe he needs to be home to support his family or friends. And if you're dealing with something, it's okay to ask for help, because the community of Wabash always fights, and you're a part of that community. I've seen the fighting spirit of Wabash College all around me. I see it in the alumni that care so much that they devote themselves to the college and its current students. I see it in the faculty and staff who come prepared every day to challenge students to grow in your education, regardless of sickness and family issues, ups and downs. I see it in the student who finds his passion along the way and has the courage to switch majors and career paths. I see it in the student with a child who juggles his responsibilities without excuse or complaint. I see it in the student with a death in the family, but who never slips in the classroom. And I see it in the student whose personal life is falling to pieces, but who's trying to push through the difficult times, sometimes just by counting his steps and making it through the day. Each person's battle is unique, and not every day is a success, but our fighting spirit ties us together. These men and women are Wabash, and these are the kind of people that I want to spend my time with. So when people ask me, why Wabash? I'll admit, I still list those things that I said in the beginning. Motivated students, fantastic colleagues, outstanding facilities. They are all true, and on their own, they're pretty good reasons to be here. I'm sure you have good answers too. High-quality education, strong alumni support, opportunities in your career paths, and good friends. The thing is, it's difficult to put into words, especially for those that haven't experienced it. In the end, the answer is right here. This is what makes Wabash feel like home. It's the individuals I've gotten to know and the community that I've become a part of. And yes, in the most important ways, it's because Wabash always fights. Thank you.
Just a few brief announcements. TGIF will be at Teak this week. Friday and Saturday, the wrestling team will be at Wheaton College. Saturday, basketball will be here at home playing Worcester. And track and field will be at the University of Indianapolis on Saturday. Please rise and sing Old Wabash.